You're listening to the Foundation Dental Podcast, strategic conversations for dentists and leaders building long-term value in dentistry. I'm Dr. Jim Arnold. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome to the Foundation Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jim Arnold, and today's guest is Dr. Len Tau, known across dentistry as the Reviews Doctor. Len's one of the rare leaders who didn't just talk about digital trust, he built a category around it. As a fee-for-service practice owner, he earned over 16,000 reviews, a 4.9 star rating, and more than 40 new patients a month, all without relying on ad agencies, and that's pretty amazing. He later founded iSocial Reviews, which was acquired by BirdEye, where he now serves as general manager of dental and advises more than 11,000 practices. He's the author of Raving Patients, host of the Raving Patients podcast, and the person who proved that trust, not advertising, is the real growth engine in dentistry. Dr. Len Tau, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, man, it's my pleasure. I was on your show about 6 months ago and just really enjoyed the conversation. And I've been looking forward to having you on my show. Kind of turn the tables, ask you a few questions this time around.
Well, I'm excited to I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to inform the conversation, because I can drop a lot of pearls and really make the audience want to take action after they listen to the podcast.
Awesome. And Len, I have no doubt that they will. You're a wealth of information, and you've got a loyal following, and you've just created so much value for so many docs out there over the years, and just so many things for the dental profession. And by the way, you've been incredibly kind to me and generous with your time and advice. And I've really appreciated that. But, let's just jump right into it. And I want to talk about something that you talk about quite a bit, analyzing the recency and velocity of reviews in dentistry. Before we jump into the dental side, now be honest, when you're ordering a pizza or booking a hotel, are you ever able to shut that part of your brain off?
No, always. I'm always on. It's to a fault sometimes, but I'm always on. Whatever I'm doing, something's always ticking in the back of my brain to figure out the next best thing, or to figure out how to help somebody, or it's always, I never stop, and it fuels me. It drives me. It keeps me going, but I don't really have downtime, I guess you can say. I was diagnosed probably over 20 years ago with something called hypermania.
Really?
Yeah. So, it's literally, I'm always high. I'm hypermanic.
Yeah.
Hypermanic.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I don't ever really have a downside. I'm always looking at the cup being half full rather than half empty.
Yeah. I love that.
I don't stress about things. It's just kind of how I live, and I'm fortunate in some extent, but to the extent that I never turn off, that's something that, my family has to deal with every so often. I got a call last night at like 9:15, and someone asked me they wanted to ask some questions about BirdEye, and I was like, great. We sat on the call. We spoke for about an hour. So, it's just what I do.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's part of what makes people really like and respect you so much, because you are always available. It reminds me of my dad, actually. He's a real estate agent. He's 84 and he still does real estate. But doesn't matter where we are. We could be out to lunch. We could be out to dinner. We could be doing anything. Maybe I haven't seen him in a couple of months, and he gets a call. He answers immediately. And it's why he still gets tons of referrals at his age, because people really appreciate when you make yourself available. And I'll be honest, I am not that available. I just can't. I'm pretty high energy as a general rule, but I need that downtime too, just to shut the phone off and sort of veg a little bit.
Yeah, I just, something I've always decided to do, and I got a lot of things I do, and I've got my hands in so many things.
Yeah.
And if I don't do those things right away, so I have a very systematic approach to the way I do things. Mm-hmm. And you were an attendee at Supercharge, but even the way I communicate with the vendors and the speakers, there's a way I do it, and that's why my events run really well, because I cross every I and I dot every T. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I dot every I and cross every T. So, but if I'm talking to somebody and I need to send an email to somebody, I don't wait till the end of the day. I do it right then and there, because I'll forget to do it.
Absolutely. When you're a busy person, it's just so hard to stay on top of everything unless you really act in the moment whenever you can. But, I want to go back to kind of a night or a moment that changed everything. And I'm not going to lie and say that I remember this or anything like that, but I read about it because I did some research on you. And the night that DemandForce Google integration collapsed, wiping out thousands of reviews. So what did that experience reveal to you about dentists who, quote unquote, rent their reputation instead of owning it? And how did that change things for you?
So I remember I was sitting at dinner out with an oral surgeon friend of mine, and that news came about, and that's
Yeah.
many, many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
And I was I was fond of dental demand force back then because, like I always, when I went to trade shows on their behalf, I would say they put you on the map because they did.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
When you search for somebody, they would have like 1,000 reviews. Because DemandForce had a way to get the reviews showing up on Google, but also they had Yelp reviews, they had DemandForce reviews. That's what Google did then. And then all of a sudden they said, we're not doing it anymore. And that was the end of that conversation. And overnight, you had dentists who literally lost their entire reputation.
Oh, jeez.
Literally, they went from 1,000 reviews down to 10 because they weren't getting Google reviews. I, on the matter of fact, was already getting Google reviews. So yes, I lost reviews, but I still had a significant number of reviews more than the average practitioner. And that is when a light went off because that's how I started getting my patients.
Ah, okay.
And being a fee for service practice,
Hmm.
and the internet was very different back then, obviously.
Yeah.
When patients would come into the office, I would ask them how they heard about me. And they said, I read your reviews, or I found you online and I read your reviews.
Hmm.
So something clicked, and that's when a light bulb went off that I would say forever changed my career.
Oh, that's so awesome. What a great origin story. And I would guess that's the moment you realized like dentistry needed an entirely new playbook for trust and digital authority. I mean, is that kind of the genesis of all that?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that reviews were driving business, which was a big
Yeah.
thing, and I started speaking on it. And I look back at because I have all my decks from every seminar I gave, going back to my one of my very first ones in 2009. That's when I first got on the stage.
Oh,
So
cool.
I've been speaking for 16 years, and I
Wait,
have
how many lectures have you done in 16 years? I know you've got a number, don't
yeah,
you?
it's well over 600 now.
Oh my God. All right.
Yeah, it's well over 600. And that's not even including webinars and those types of things, but just getting on
Jeez.
stage live in person. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I people really enjoy what I talk about because it's not your typical stuff. I don't teach clinical
Yeah.
dentistry. I teach business and marketing, case acceptance, those types of things. But I knew reviews were important, but there was really no great way to get them. And I still remember I was driving home in my car and I called my wife up and I said, I think I have an idea. She was like, what's that? I think I'm going to create a piece of software to help dentists get better reviews or more reviews online. And she was like,
Mhm.
yeah, have at it. Have fun. Good luck with that. And again, lo and behold, that was in 2013. So
Okay.
that's, 11 plus 12 years ago. And again, that I never expected it to do what it did. And at that point, I launched iSocial reviews
Hmm.
and started. I went to my very first trade show as a Yankee Dental in 2013, and I remember calling them up on the phone and telling them, the person who I didn't know, obviously, I just said, hey, I have a product I want to bring to the Yankee Dental meeting. I don't have any money. Put me in the remnant space where they have the bamboo sheets and the knives and those types of things. I didn't care where I was. I just wanted in. I just wanted in. And I had a friend of mine design the artwork for the banners and stuff. And I look at it now and it's a joke what we did. And I
Yeah.
couldn't, and I was still practicing dentistry, of course. So the meeting starts on Thursday. I wasn't leaving my practice. So I had a friend of mine go and set up. I showed up on Friday and I sold 9 licenses the very first meeting I went to. And I was like, we've got something here.
Wow.
And then we were charging back then, I think it was like $400+ a month with like $1,000 setup fee. And so it was significant. And then
Yeah,
I came
absolutely.
home and I said, okay, when are we going to go to the next show? So I went to Chicago Midwinter
Hmm.
and went to Hinman. And then we went to the AACD, which I think was in Orlando at that time.
Hmm.
And after 4 meetings, it was like, this is something really effective. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go further into this. And, little did I know, in a year and a half or a little under a year, I had 180 offices using the product. And
Jeez.
that's kind of how the journey began.
That is fantastic. I love that story. Like even before that, I mean, you were kind of an outlier. You had like 1,600 reviews, 4.9 star rating, which is, I think, pretty much unheard of to have that many and all that high. What was the first like system or habit you developed to get that kind of a result?
Well, it was asking patients.
Okay.
And, it was literally just saying, I want to go back for a second because I still talk about it now, is that I think each and every practice, in order to go deep into reviews or make reviews a priority, which it should be 100%,
Yeah.
you have to create a reputation culture in the office. And that's something I talk about a lot. is that if you don't have a reputation culture, and what I mean by that is your team, yourself know that every patient who comes in is going to get some communication, whether it's a survey, whether it's an email, a text, whatever it is, where they're basically going to grade you on your performance. Okay.
Nice.
And if you have that culture where you deliver a 5-star experience
Mm-hmm.
and make yourself different and make yourself stand out, that's
Yeah.
how it will take your practice to the next level. So I kind of set the stage for that. And once that happened and I made my team aware of how important it was, there was different rules back then, of course. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
were literally able to get someone to write a review in your office.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I would literally walk into the computer, I would open up Google and say, hey, write a review for me. I mean, that's what it was. You can't do that
I love
anymore.
that. The direct approach.
Yeah. Well, I'm very direct for those that
Well,
don't know me.
as soon as they go home, they're not going to do it. They're busy and it's like, oh yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. And they never get around to it. I mean, I've done that before. So that's
100% so.
Mhm.
But being direct, I asked them and they did it in the office and it was great. And, back then they had anonymous reviews where
Right.
they didn't have to have a name. Now, and a lot of those reviews, I was so deep into it that there was times I lost reviews because anonymous reviews were eliminated because I was such an early
Oh,
adopter out there.
right.
But it literally starts by just recognizing the fact that you've got to do it and then creating this culture and then asking. And once you start doing that and getting the team behind it, I think that's a very big step that practices take because the way you know it's working is when patients show up at the practice and you ask them how they heard about you and they said, well, I read your reputation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that. And it's probably part of the reason why you're known as the guy with 85% case acceptance. I mean, dentists would freaking kill for that. Like, what would you say is the most overlooked variable that leads to high case acceptance for dentists?
So I think when it comes to case acceptance, I think tracking is really important. Most
Hmm.
practices, if I ask them, so what's your case acceptance? They look at me like they have no clue. They have no
Right?
clue. They have no way to track it.
Absolutely.
They think it's good. And if they think it's good, it's usually not. But I say, do you actually track it? And they go, no. Well, I think you have to track it. So, and I think you have to understand the definition of case acceptance
Hmm.
because there's two really ways to define it. So one is you present treatments and the patient accepts one part of the treatment,
Hmm.
or is it you present a whole treatment plan and they accept the whole treatment plan? So which definition? My goal is when someone came into my practice was
Yeah.
to get them to do at least one thing. Because if they
Okay.
come in and they're a new patient, you do an exam and take some x-rays and you present them something and then they say, I'm going to think about it. You have nothing and they may not even come back again. Usually if they're going to do
Absolutely.
one thing, they will remain with you, hopefully, and that will continue to improve that case acceptance. But I want them to say yes to one thing, and I'm very happy with that.
I
So
agree 100%. It's almost like they do that one simple thing and then they feel more comfortable. You know, they've had a couple of visits, everybody knows them, they like the culture, you didn't hurt them. And it's like, all right, well, this is my dental home. I trust you now, and I'm gonna do more. Whether they do it all now or do it over the next 2 years, they're probably never gonna leave you with that kind of experience.
and so that's a big part of getting case acceptance is understanding what it is.
Yeah.
But it's really learning a lot of the things. And I teach a class called The Art of the Sale, which is a very different type of seminar, but
Hmm.
it talks about the things you need to do to separate and differentiate yourself from other practices. It
Yeah.
teaches like the behavioral techniques, how to what we call disarm the patient, which
Hmm.
again is not something nobody's ever taught to do. How to use your body language and your eye movements and your head nods to basically get them to say yes to treatment.
Yeah.
It talks about how to use third-party financing, which is a very important way to make patients treatment affordable to the patients.
Hmm.
Because obviously people think that's the reason they say no. If it's not always the reason financial, there's other things.
Right.
You've got to create value. You've got to make them understand how urgent something is. And if they see value in it, they're going to buy it. Very infrequently is
Yes.
someone who sees value going to not spend the money. So the money part of it is such a different type of factor in the whole sequence of things. So my case acceptance, I was very successful in the practice because I had a lot of new patients coming in because they found me online and I was able to get them to say yes to treatment, even if I didn't take their insurance. And that
Yes.
comes to one of the things I always like to talk about is if you're a fee for service practice, you should always have a membership plan. And I was a very early adopter in a lot of things. One of the things I was a very early adopter in was having a membership plan we called the Oral Health Savings Plan.
Huh.
And it started in 2010 because I was the very first dentist in Philadelphia to do a Groupon deal. Now, back then, Groupon was very different than it is now. And,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
overnight, I think I sold 500 deals in one night
My
that
gosh.
enabled me to accept or get up to 500 patients. A lot of them didn't come, but
Right, right.
that convinced me I needed to find a way for them to become loyal to my practice. And a lot
Okay.
of these
That's
Groupon
great.
patients didn't have insurance. So
Okay.
that's why I started this membership plan before membership plans existed. Now you
Mm-hmm.
have software to do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's many companies that can do it automatically for you. I developed it and then managed this plan in my practice to get these patients who are loyal. And literally that was 2010 and we're in 2025 now. And there are still patients who from that original Groupon deal are still patients in the practice. And every single year they buy this membership plan to remain loyal to the practice.
It's fantastic, Len. It's really cool. You have always been a guy with a million things going on. I know you mentioned hypermania earlier, and you just never need a down moment. You just go, go, go. But I mean, let's be honest, when you were doing iSocial reviews, you're podcasting, writing books, speaking, consulting, all that stuff. I mean, did you ever face burnout? Or if you did you just kind of power through it, shrug it off?
So the time I had burnout was when I first bought my practice in 2007.
Hmm.
I bought it from a dentist who committed suicide, unfortunately. Bought the practice, bought the building, gutted the building, worked on the side that wasn't being worked on. So we had a split office. So one side was getting construction, I was working on the other side,
Oh,
and
nice.
built the practice of my dreams. But I wasn't living the life of my dreams.
Huh.
And the practice was beautiful, high tech galore, but I was burning out, and I was working my tail off, more on the business than actually doing dentistry. I only was doing dentistry 25 hours a week.
Hmm.
And that really never changed throughout the time I was doing my own practice. But I was working on the business, could be 30 or 40 hours a week just on the business side.
Absolutely.
And which is why I'm on the business side now, because I really enjoy that part of it. Not that I ever did not enjoy in dentistry. I
Right.
love doing dentistry. But the point of it is that, when you have these issues that you're dealing with and patients and team members and you're working your butt off, I started to get burnout from practice, and I knew I was not going to be 80 years old and want to be a dentist anymore.
Yeah.
And I had been meeting some people on the road who were in their late 70s, early 80s, and they were still practicing and I said, there's no way I'm going to ever let that happen to me. And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why I went the direction I'm in, that I did go in, because I wanted to find not a way out. I never thought at 49 years old that I'd be retiring from dental practice.
Right.
That was not in the cards at the time.
I did the same thing at 50 for the same reason. It's like,
Yeah.
life is short. And I thought at 35, I loved being a dentist, but I felt like, man, I don't want to live the rest of my life without having another career. It can be in dentistry, but I want to do something else. And do you feel that way too?
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
100% agree with you. And, people always, when I talk to dentists, they're somewhat envious of the fact that I no longer practice. They wish they could
Yeah.
do the same thing. But
Yeah.
I always tell people, a lot of it was luck. I mean, I got lucky. I
Sure.
picked the right thing to go into. I never expected in 2010 or 11 that reviews would be even more important now than they were then. Who
Yeah.
knows that? But,
Right.
versus some other things you can go into and then it dies and nothing's around anymore. So I picked the right thing, but I always work hard. I earned everything I've ever done. I've been working honestly since I was about 13 years old. I started a baseball card business when I was 13 years old.
Oh, that's cool.
Going to trade shows. I worked through college. I worked at a computer store selling computers. So I've never stopped working basically either from the time I was able to, because I just
Yeah.
enjoy that. There's a thrill from doing that. There's a thrill from making a sale. There's a thrill from having a patient say yes to treatment. There's a thrill from doing, selling a practice, one location, a $3,000 BirdEye software. So that's what is that dopamine hit that you need. And that's kind of what I'm driven by.
Oh, that's awesome. When you did retire from clinical, and like I said, I retired from clinical at 50, but did you miss like actually putting down the drill more or more the identity of Dr. Tau, the clinician? Like which was harder for you?
So it's funny. I've never been someone who loves being called Dr. Tao ever. That's
Yeah,
never been a
I
thing
know.
of
I'm
mine.
Jim. I'm Jim
Yeah.
everywhere I
Yeah.
go.
As my dad was Dr. Tao. My dad used that a lot. I very
Yeah.
rarely, unless I need to use that. In
Yeah.
fact,
Right.
now I want everybody to call me Len. I don't like being called Dr. Tao. Yes, I
Yeah, me
appreciate the
too.
recognition, but I
Yeah.
prefer Len. That's what people know me as.
I have
And
that conversation all the time. Everybody wants to call me Dr. Jim, and it's fine, but it's like, hey, you can just call me Jim. It's okay. I don't need that.
yeah, no, I agree 100%. And even people who are doctors in the industry who reach out to me because of BirdEye
Hmm.
and they're doctors, they say, "Hey, Dr. Tao." I'm like, it's Len. I just think it's
Yeah,
interesting.
it is interesting.
When I decided to hang it up, so just so people understand, so in 2020, prior to 2020, I had thought about putting my practice up for sale,
Hmm.
and moving to, my wife and I were in Florida in Thanksgiving of 2019. So literally 6 years ago now. We were on the beach in Delray Beach, and I said to my wife, "How would you think about moving to Florida at some point?" And she was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Definitely interested in it." So I went home and spoke to my attorney, my accountant, my advisors, and we said, "Let's put a 5 year in place. And in 5 years, when my son's in college, we'll look at moving to Florida." And then COVID hit.
Oh,
In February, I put my practice up for sale in January because I decided it was better for me to be the associate and just be making money rather than running the business. At that time, I was
mhm.
working 2 days a week in the practice.
Perfect.
COVID hit and forget about the sale at that point. And after COVID ended, my associate left, and I was working full time for the first time in since 2017. And I hired an associate who turned out to buy the practice about a year later. But I was already living in Florida at that point, so we moved to Florida in 2020 because COVID hit, and I was sick and tired of just being up in Philadelphia. So I literally went to bed one day and woke up the next day and said, "How would you like to move to Florida?" To my wife. And she was like, "We already talked about this like 5 years." I'm like, "No, no, right, like right now." She goes, "You're not serious." And I said, I'll show
Wow.
you how serious I am." So I literally went to Google and I typed in the best realtor, South Florida, found the first person listed there, called them up. I said, I would like to move to Florida. If you can call me back as soon as possible, I would appreciate it. And the person called me back 5 minutes later. I told her what I was looking for. It had to be a new construction. She said, "When can you come down?" I'm like, "I'll be down tomorrow."
Oh my God, Len, that's crazy.
And we looked at the property. We didn't like it, and she found out that there was a house in the same community that was coming up for sale as a resale, but brand new. And we contacted the person. We made an offer. We bought it, and 3 months later, we were living in Florida.
Unbelievable.
And I was commuting back and forth from November 1st, we basically moved in from
Okay.
November to the following year as the owner. And then I sold in October of 21. And
Hmm.
then for the following year plus, I was working as the associate, and then I was commuting till December of 2022
Okay.
when I hang it up, when I
So
hung
you
it up.
commuted over a year
Two
back and
years,
forth.
2 years
Oh,
back and
two
forth.
years. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So Monday,
Wow.
I would fly up Monday morning at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
I would land in Philadelphia around 8:39, and then I would drive to the office and stay at a hotel. I would fly
Mhm.
back either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, depending on what the schedule allowed.
Okay.
And then I would come home and I would be on the road again because I would be somewhere, usually at a trade show on Thursday or Friday. So I lived a very nomadic life during those times.
Well,
Um,
it prepared you well for your life today. I mean, because every time I open up social media, you're flying somewhere. And and that look, I love to travel. I don't mind the airports and all the stuff at all. As long as you enjoy what you're doing and the people you're doing it with, I don't have any problem. Do you feel that way too?
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Oh, good.
Definitely do. So that's kind of the story, of kind of how things have happened. I guess you can say would be
Hmm.
a good way to describe it.
In
Um,
terms of your mindset, though, like when you went from managing one practice to all of a sudden kind of influencing 11,000, like what did that feel like? I mean, was there a major mindset shift or was it just natural?
Very natural for me. I remember I'd been doing it since 2013 to some extent.
That's true. Yeah.
When I first started, I was doing it all myself. I was doing the onboarding and the training and the
Oh, jeez.
support and everything else. And then obviously when BirdEye acquired me, I really became just the head of the sales department in the dental side and the
Hmm.
trade show side. But over the years, we've acquired a lot of clients, and I'm the only one at BirdEye that sells into the dental space.
Hmm.
1 to 9 locations. So once it gets over 9, it goes to an upmarket team. But
Yeah.
it shows you the power of what happens when you sell a product that does what it says it does and does it well.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
why, that's what continues to drive me every day. When I have,
It's so. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say when I have a day when I have 3, 4, 5, 6 demos on a call or on
Yeah.
Zoom, it's and you get the like I said, dopamine hit when somebody says I want to move forward. That's what drives me, I guess you can say.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. And that leads right into my next question about a quote from Peter Stoilov, who said, "Without Len Tau, BirdEye wouldn't have a dental division." How do you process a statement like that? I mean, does it give you a sense of pride or pressure, gratitude? How do you feel about that?
Well, it's certainly appreciated. Peter worked for me at BirdEye, and he was one of my traveling trade show partners at these
Okay.
various meetings, and so he knows the effect I had, and he knows the trust I
Mhm.
basically brought to BirdEye, and it's greatly appreciated. I don't think BirdEye would be where it was without me, and I've been here a long time. I don't own the company. I am a full-time employee. They pay
Mhm.
my expenses. I get commission for my sales.
Mhm.
I've got stock in the company, which obviously is a good thing.
Absolutely.
But no, it's nice look, it's nice that I get recognized wherever I go for anything I
Yeah.
do. When someone hears my voice, because I have a unique voice, and they say, "Do you have a podcast I listen to?" Which has happened in line and in various places every so
No
often.
kidding.
So it's nice to be recognized for anything. When somebody says you did a good job, or I won the Peers Choice Award 2 years ago for my podcast. It's nice that someone recognizes you for your contributions to the industry, because even though I'm not a dentist anymore, I'm still very a part of the dental industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Len, the way I look at it is, when you're a dentist, you're seeing patients, you've got a practice or even a couple of practices, you can do a lot of good. But when you're able to hang up the handpiece and have an impact on the whole industry, I think, that's a real force multiplier, and you can impact a lot more lives that way. And it doesn't really matter whether you're talking about clinical or business or, reputation management. It's just like creating value in your lane. And you've done such a good job of that. And by the way, when you bring other great speakers together who get up and talk about the things that you don't necessarily want to talk about, I mean, there's kind of something for everybody, which is what I really noticed at Supercharge this year. It was just a great lineup and some speakers I had never heard before. I enjoyed it a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. Supercharge is an idea I have had for a very long time. One of the things I've done over the years is I've waited for the opportunity to do something. I didn't just jump in and do it.
Yeah.
So I met back in 2019, 2018 with Mark LeBlanc, and he said, "Len,
Mhm.
you need to write a book. I've written 2 books. You need to have an event." And I wanted to wait till a certain point to launch the event, and that was actually timed with me getting out of practice, so I can
Mhm.
devote my time there.
Yeah.
And just like I do everything, I'm very methodical. I'm very strategic in the way I do things. We just had year 3. Year 1 was in Delray Beach. Actually, on the beach that was that when I first decided to come down to Florida, which is interesting. And then year 2 was in Scottsdale, which was in 2024. And then this
Mhm.
year was in Fort Lauderdale, and we'll be at the same venue for 2 more years, at least, probably forever, because as you know, that hotel was amazing.
Honestly, I have to compliment you, Len. I think I even said on your podcast that I'm kind of a travel snob. I like things to be really nice. That was really nice. I hadn't heard of it. I wasn't expecting that. And I walked in, I was like, you know what? This is really sharp. And then you've got that bar at the top, with the 360 views. I mean, it's just the whole place has a great vibe about it.
I've told everybody who I mentioned the event to that it is, and I travel a lot,
Yeah,
obviously. It
yeah.
is like the nicest hotel I've ever been in. And people go, "Yeah, I'm right. I travel a lot." I'm sure not. And they all come to me afterwards and tell me how amazing the venue was. And that's great. I mean, I found a home. My wife and I went to that venue when it was still being built back April of last year. We went for the first time
Okay.
in 2024. Before even second year Supercharge took place. And I had a vision. I saw their vision. I said, we only looked at one venue down here, and that's where we picked, and it was the
Yeah.
right choice. And so that's a big reason why I think the event was successful. But you had no idea what you were coming into with Supercharge. Just like even though
No.
I let the speakers know what to expect. I mean, Rich
Yeah.
Maddow, who's a big time speaker, he goes, and Steve Reisner too, who you
Yeah.
know very well. They
Yeah.
came to me, so Len, I've never imagined it to be such a big spectacle. They expected like a study club type of atmosphere. This is a big event that I put on. It has a very large budget, cost me a lot of money, and this year you were at in particular was absolutely phenomenal. The worst thing that happened was we ran 15 minutes late. That was it. Seriously, that was the worst thing that happened the
Well,
entire
I
time.
think I complimented you on just the fact that everything did just run like a well-oiled machine. And I was blown away that like you hardly have a team. Like you're doing everything, which I know how hard it is for a small event, but for a bigger event like that, that is a lot of effort. And you've got to be really well organized and like you are high energy to actually pull that off. And you did it with flying colors, my friend.
I appreciate that, and my wife definitely has a say in things because I bounce most things off of her. And then I have a team that handles the logistics side of things with the hotel,
Hmm.
and so I'm not on the hotel side of things. But other than
Hmm.
that, it's all me. The speakers, the sponsors, the ticket sales, that's
Hmm.
all me. And when it comes off as flawless as it did, it really makes me feel good that everybody had a great time. And
Yes.
even better, we had 52 vendors, which is a lot of vendors.
And they were
But when,
great vendors, by the way. I mean, every
yep,
one of them was just a really high end, great vendor, just good people. I loved that whole atmosphere.
it was, like I said, the event, I don't know how I can top it next year, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But 52 vendors, and it's November 26th when we're recording this. And the 52, 40 have been confirmed coming back. And I've only heard from 5 of them that they're not coming back,
Huh.
mostly due to budgetary reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, to have that type of response from all those vendors, I just want as many people to show up. And
Yep.
the most difficult thing for me over the years is really to gain much attendance, even though it's such a great event. I
Yeah.
want more people to show up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I have no doubt that it'll continue to grow from here. But I'm going to switch tracks just a little bit and talk about reputation management versus reputation marketing. And you kind of draw a sharp line between the two, calling one a defensive cost center and the other a growth engine that makes competition irrelevant. Like, how do you define those two?
So reputation management was a very old term that I was really annoyed with because when you manage something, it's like getting the negative reviews off of page one or worrying about the negative reviews. You're managing something
Yeah.
versus you've got these amazing 5-star reviews. It's obviously going to help bring in more new patients. I want you
Mhm.
to shout from the top of the mountaintops that you have a 5-star reputation and literally use that to get more new patients. So that's the
Yes.
biggest difference. One is really worrying about negative reviews. One is getting more 5-star reviews and using that power of your people to get patients to come into the practice. That's the difference between management and marketing. And if you're using a company or a company calls you up and they say, we have reputation management, I would just hang up the phone and leave them or leave them because they're not with this day and age. This day and age, you simply want to market your great reputation, and that will have a huge effect on bringing new patients into your practice.
Absolutely. And then another line that you like to use is when patients become your marketers, competition becomes irrelevant. And that's a really powerful idea. And it's so, I mean, honestly, it's pretty brilliant. Do you remember the first moment that idea actually clicked for you? Like, when did that light bulb go on?
Well, in particular to that, there is a moment that Google defined back in 2011.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay.
And that moment is called the ZMOT,
Okay.
ZMOT.
I've never heard
And
that.
feel free to look it up because back then in 2011, it was a big time story. And I used to teach it at seminars, and people were like, I've never heard of this. And it really made people think about things. But that ZMOT is called the zero moment of truth.
Huh. Okay.
And that zero moment of truth is when a patient decides, it's that moment when a patient decides to inquire or research about a particular procedure. So I want to get my teeth fixed. I'm going to go look up veneers. And then they start
Hmm.
looking up veneers. When they actually make that decision, it's called the zero moment of truth.
Mm.
And you have to be, in order to be the selected practice, you have to be that in the right place at the right time there. And a lot of that is driven by reviews. So I
Hmm.
realized that if you get reviews, now it's more about visibility as well. You need both of those now. But back then it was simply the reviews. When you had those reviews, it helped drive new patients to the practice. And that's really how you made your money. So that is why this has always been at the forefront of what I talk about, because when you can separate yourself from the lower end practices or the practices down the street that
Yeah.
are don't practice high quality dentistry, you eliminate all the competition, especially as a fee for
Absolutely.
service practice.
Oh
So
my
that's where
gosh.
that's
Yes.
where that came from.
Yes. And that's what I talk to doctors about a lot. It's like if you set up the culture and you create the value and you have that great team that makes everybody feel like they're going home, I mean, it doesn't come down to cost anymore. It comes down to that relationship. And when you're a relationship-based practice, you really do kind of transcend competition. And I remember I never felt like I was competing with my main practice, Len, was in a town of 11,000 people, and there were 14 dentists. And we always had more patients than we could handle. And then my second practice was in a town of 35,000, and there were about 40 dentists. And you know what? We just did things our way. We had our put our heads down, did our things our own way. We didn't worry about anybody else. And we did feel that way. Competition was irrelevant. There are plenty of patients for everyone. We do our thing, and people will stay and be loyal.
100% agree with you. 100%
Yeah.
agree with that. So when you have that understanding about
Hmm.
what it developed, what it does for you, and you
Yeah.
see the effect very early on in your career, it could have massive effect on the future of your career. If
Well,
you're
and it's why
behind,
so many patients who are out of network, they'll stay with you too. They'll pay probably double out of pocket because they know they're in the right place, right?
yeah, one of the things I recognize too, and it's been proven by surveys done by American Express, if you treat a patient right and you do good dentistry and you provide a really good service, they will stay, they will spend money, they will buy something from you, and then they will tell their friends and family. So that
Yes.
has a lot to do with it, but it all revolves around this patient experience, which is something I talk about as well, because if you don't provide a great patient experience and wow the patient, none of the rest of them happen.
Absolutely true. I want to talk about marketing for just a second. I mean, there's a lot of like fluffy marketing talk out there. What's one piece of like fluffy, outdated marketing advice dentists still follow that just drives you crazy?
So it's interesting, it's this marketing moves so quickly nowadays,
Yeah,
and
true.
websites are important, even though people are saying they're not. I think there's going to be some change in how Google AdWords are thought of, especially with the advent of AI and search.
Yeah.
I think if you are ignoring artificial intelligence right now, ignoring these large language models. Um,
Yes.
I think that's super important to get on that bandwagon, because I guarantee you in 2, 3, 4 years, nobody's going to be using Google really anymore to search. They're going to simply go onto ChatGPT and say, I'm buying a toilet. Tell me what the best toilet is. And same thing,
Yeah.
I'm going to a dentist, give me a list of the top dentists in my area and the reason why I should choose one over the other. And
Yeah.
that they're taking data that's driven or given to these engines by patients, by you, et cetera. And you have to be at the forefront there. So, nothing is dead when it comes to marketing. I'm not a fan of traditional marketing, of course, but
Yeah.
SEO is super important still. So be very careful what road you go down in. But
Mhm.
you cannot ignore AI, but also AI is right now not the end all be all as well. So
Right. I mean, you really have to appeal to both. And I have to admit that when I write any kind of content, I make sure that it's not only SEO optimized, but it's also GEO optimized. I mean, it's so important. But let's talk about review velocity. What actually really matters to Google today, since we're still in that crossover point between SEO and more GEO, AEO. But in terms of Google, is it star rating, recency, quality, frequency, and how often should practices be getting reviews?
So the reason this comes up in conversation now is because there's been always a discrepancy in the industry, and that discrepancy is that I have a lot of reviews I'm not ranking, or I have a lot
Hmm.
of reviews and my competition is ranking above me. So it's not only about the reviews now. There's other things that go into the process of gaining visibility. You need both visibility and credibility
Yeah.
in order to really get the patients to see you and come in.
Hmm.
So there are practices out there that have a lot of reviews, but if they're not visible, that's a problem. Okay. So you
Yes.
need both of these things. And when Google looks at practices to determine whether they should rank them or not, then not, obviously the number of reviews is a very important factor,
Hmm.
which honestly right now, 200 to 250 is really the average. And that's where the minimum that you really want to have, which again, if you're a new practice, it's harder. But if you have 75 and you've been in business 20 years, it's just not enough. Okay.
Right.
But regardless of that, even more important, according to these Google local ranking guides, is the velocity of reviews. And the
Hmm.
velocity of reviews, how often you're getting them.
Yeah.
And a practice is that gets one or two every week versus the one that gets one a month. The one that gets one or two a week generally ranks above the one that gets one a month. So
Interesting.
ideally, in an ideal world, I would love a practice to get, two or three every week. If that's not
Yeah.
possible, at least 1 to 2 every single week, which I think is very doable. Because if you think about it, if you get 1 to 2 every week, you're getting 4 to 8 maybe. If you get eight
Yeah.
a week, you're getting almost 100 a year, and that's
Yeah.
that's really good velocity. I mean, that's for a single doctor practice. I mean, I practice
Sure.
with 5 doctors that are getting 30 or 40 in a week. That's great too. Okay,
Right.
but you can't rest on your laurels and think I have enough reviews, because you don't. And if you
Yeah.
are getting them and then you drop and you start getting none, you will drop in the rankings. I can guarantee you that. And that's why
Absolutely.
the velocity is a very big ranking factor. But even more importantly, from a ranking factor, which you didn't ask about this, but I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
and it just came out in WhiteSpark's 26 Google local ranking guide, which came out, I think, November 6th. And you can just Google WhiteSpark, Google local ranking, and it will list
Hmm.
the ranking factors. The number one ranking factor is, believe it or not, the primary category of the business.
Really?
Now how does someone determine the primary
Oh,
category?
and Google's so limited with regard to categories. It
Correct.
comes to dentistry, especially. It's just awful.
Correct. So how does someone determine their primary category? If they look at their Google business listing, or they
Yeah.
type in if they type in just dentist near me and they come up, it will say something in a town or something in a county. So
Yeah. It's all
obviously,
local.
if you're a dentist, you want it to say dentist.
Yeah.
Okay, not a dental clinic. Okay, you want it to say dentist. If you are 95% cosmetic dentist, it's okay to say cosmetic dentist. If you do general dentistry and like doing cosmetic dentistry, you still want your primary category to be dentist. So
Hmm.
dentist is a important ranking factor. I just spoke to a periodontist in Louisiana, New Orleans area, and their primary category was medical clinic, and they're
Oh,
a periodontist. So that when
oh my
people are typing
gosh.
periodontist in, they're not showing up. Okay.
Yeah.
My,
Yeah.
my wife, my wife a year and a half ago was looking to have some plastic surgery done, and we got some referrals. We also were looking online and reviews. And the one person we went into his practice and we chose, it was not a Google search, it was a referral to his practice. I started speaking at his event. He does a plastic surgery event. And
Oh,
I was showing
nice.
him talking about this at his event. And he looked himself up and he was listed as a nurse practitioner. He wasn't listed as a plastic
Oh
surgeon.
my God. Say, who set
So
that up?
right. So
Oh,
the primary category is very important, but you also, this, I think it's number 8 on the list, secondary categories, and you can have up to 9 of them. They are also very important ranking factors as well. Okay.
okay.
So you have to, this is putting your Google Home in the right order. This is
Hmm.
the baseline. This is the foundation for everything you're going to be doing. If you do
Yeah.
not set your Google Home up for success, you'll never be successful online and be found locally.
Oh man, I don't necessarily want to be found locally, but I remember when I was picking my category, it was challenging, because I'm
I
doing a
don't think
bunch of different
consultant is
stuff.
one. Yeah, there's no
No, no,
consultant.
it's
No.
not. Yeah, honestly, I think I ended up picking dental school. I think that's what AI recommended. It was like the closest and best thing, and I don't know whether that's been effective or not, but I know how important that is. So,
Yeah, primary category is secondary categories always seems to be a struggle as well. Just to
mhm.
make it clear to those listening and reviewing, secondary categories, if you do cosmetic dentistry is a really good secondary category. If you
Yeah,
place or restore implants, dental implant provider. If you take teeth out, you can do oral surgeon. It's not saying you're an oral surgeon, it's you do oral surgery. If you
right.
want to do aligners, you need to have orthodontics as a category. So you need to understand, depending on what you want to promote or depending on what you want to potentially rank for, you have to add these secondary categories. And it's very common to see only one or two or none secondary categories. So it's a very important step you take.
Well, that's really valuable, I think, for the listeners. I mean, I think everybody needs to go in and actually look at that tonight or tomorrow, figure it out, and if you're not in the right category, change it immediately because it makes such a big impact. And another thing that could make a big impact, are negative reviews. Except when you're Len Tau and you say negative reviews are the 1%. And that kind of goes back to the whole idea of, hey, just flood it with, as many positive reviews as possible, and then you don't have to worry so much. But so what's your protocol for handling a 1-star review uh, without losing your cool, your dignity, or your algorithmic standing? Because I gotta admit, like the few times I got like a poor review, I internally I would lose my mind because every time it was like this person wasn't even a patient, or they came in, or they missed their appointment, and there's always some kind of weird misunderstanding. But what's your best advice to a doctor who gets a 1-star review?
So first of all, if you've never gotten a 1-star review, you're not a real dentist yet. Okay. So you're just like if you haven't done
Yeah.
enough endo, if you haven't broken a file, you
Yes.
haven't you haven't been a dentist long enough if you haven't got a bad review. It's
Or
just the
if
nature.
you're say you're a cosmetic dentist, but you've never had a veneer break, you're not a dentist. You're just a liar.
Correct. Correct. So every dentist is going to have a bad review at some point. Okay.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you said, the best defense is simply to generate more positives. That is
Yeah.
the best defense against a bad review. Now, for every bad review, 15 positives needs to overwhelm the one review to kind of bury it. So keep that in
Yes.
mind.
Yes.
But you should have bad reviews for your practice. It's good for business to have bad reviews. Being a 5-star rated business is not good from a patient's perspective. They want to see that there's some negativity that potentially is there.
Yeah.
Well, it could be anything, but to be only 5-star rated, there's something that seems very fishy there.
You know
So,
what? Good point.
yep,
Huh.
yep. And I ended my career with 91 negative reviews. And if you
Okay.
think about it, in 23 years, or let's say
Over
it's
16 to 1
yeah,
positive.
yeah. Let's say it's 15 years as when I was as the owner of the practice. 15 years, 91 reviews. That's about 6 reviews a year that are negative.
Yeah.
But compared to the thousands of positive reviews I had, there were so many patients who came into my practice because of what I looked like online, even though I had negatives. Okay.
That's wild. And you know what? It does give you that credibility. I do look at reviews for any business, and I'm not as sophisticated as you are about it, but I do look at all of that, and I can tell when they're fake reviews. They just stacked up a bunch of BS, and I've seen even like physicians have that. It's clear they hired somebody who just put in a bunch of reviews all on the same day. And then there's not a single review for like 6 weeks. And then there's a review, and it's to me, it's so transparent and so obvious. So I think that's brilliant. I never thought about that. The fact that a few negatives give credibility to all the positives.
100% so. That's exactly how it's been ever since I first started getting it.
Huh.
And a lot of the way I evolved in the reputation space is because I've spoken to patients about it. So I went right to I did the market research with those who were mostly affected by it, which are those patients who had, came in or did not come in for a specific reason. I asked them, why don't you write reviews? What about negative reviews? Why do you go to Google to write a negative review? And the answer was because the practice has never given me a way to leave feedback to them. That's why in BirdEye, we have green and red buttons where green goes to Google and red goes back to the practice. Really? So this is a feedback form that we developed simply because patients want to leave you feedback, but you have to give them the ability to do that. And if you don't do it, they go to Google. That's the only place they know to leave you negative feedback.
That's brilliant. I love that. That kind of, I mean, oh my gosh, you're much less likely to get a negative review if they can just give you that direct feedback. I mean, they may complain that they can't complain to somebody. So, gosh,
100% agree. Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, going back to what we were talking about originally, again, the best defense is more positives. I would urge you to take a deep breath before you respond.
Oh,
because
boy.
If you respond in a way that's problematic, it can have ripple effects that last a long, long time.
Yes.
I am not a fan of responding online. Mm-hmm. I will make that very clear. Okay. In most cases, I do not want you to reply online. I'd rather you try to take it offline, figure out who it is, potentially call them, reach out, correct the problem. That's always going to be the best way to do it. Mm-hmm. If you correct the problem, there's a pretty good chance that they'll take the review down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So I always want you to try and reach out to them to do this. If you then can't reach out or you can't get them on the phone, a very generic response is fine. But I'm overall not a fan of responding to the negatives in most cases because I think it can get you into problems.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my favorite things on the Raving Patients Facebook page is, when you post a negative review and everybody kind of pitches in and they say what they really want to say, and then somebody will say the voice of reason and, well, have you thought about this? Or you'll step in and moderate. But yeah, the knee jerk is always like, who the hell do you think you are? What are you even talking about? And blah, blah, blah. So no, I think that's great advice. It's kind of like when you're upset with somebody, it's like, write the letter and put it in your drawer. It can be cathartic just to write it, put it in your drawer. And in a couple of days, I think Abraham Lincoln did that. In a couple of days, it will have worn off and you just throw it in the garbage. So
100% agree with you. That's exactly correct.
So, I want to talk about Yelp for a second. I mean, most dentists just don't really even like Yelp or want to deal with it, but you lean into it. You help dentists get better at it. Why is that? And how does that impact dentistry?
Yeah, well, Yelp is a never-changing beast. Yelp has lost its flavor in a lot of places. If you're in California, they think it's important. I don't think it's important. And even though I give a class called Help on Yelp, the end result is you don't have to worry about Yelp. You want to worry about Google, and you need to dominate Google. So I've learned how to deal with Yelp because it's such a game you have to play with them. But I want to make it very clear, I'm not a fan of Yelp. I never use it in my practice. I don't want you to pay for services because they will ultimately try to get you to pay for their services. But they're also not running an extortion campaign where if you don't pay them, they post your negative reviews only. There's a true filter there. So there's a lot of things that people misunderstand with Yelp, but I am not in favor of Yelp, just so you know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense.
Just to make it very clear.
Thank you. So, with all the practices you oversee at BirdEye, what's the single biggest behavior or pattern that you see in practices that really dominate their markets?
Interesting question. Well, it's obviously for those who dominate, it's going to be getting their name, address, and phone number consistent, which is a big thing nowadays is having that consistent presence online. but it's also obviously having a decent velocity of reviews or a decent number of reviews. And
Mm-hmm.
there's an area in the country, I don't want to get it too specific, but I had 4 practices in the area that were using BirdEye, which is kind of rare. But anyway, one of them decided to drop BirdEye, and I told them, I said, look, for me, if you leave, it doesn't do anything to me at all. It has no
Mm-hmm.
effect on me in any way, shape, or form. But
Mm-hmm.
I said, you have to be very careful because if you leave, you need to maintain that same velocity of reviews that you were getting before. If not,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to drop in rankings. He goes, okay, I appreciate that. But he didn't take my advice. And he left
Oh.
BirdEye, but he never kept the same velocity. And what do you think happened to his rankings? His ranking
Oh.
take, and he reached out a
Yeah.
couple of days ago to me to try to come back. But the point is that if you understand how these algorithms work and you have this dramatic change, you lose your ranking. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that stands out amongst the offices who use BirdEye is they get a consistent flow of reviews at a very
Mm-hmm.
nice velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Velocity. They should have corrected their categories if they've spoken to me about it. And
Mm-hmm.
then we add that extra flair, which is making sure their data is consistent online. And then what's
Mm-hmm.
happening is they really are visible online. And when you're visible and you have credibility, you bring in more new patients to the practice. So I think that's a common denominator between a lot of these practices.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. We touched on just briefly a few minutes ago, generative engine optimization, GEO, and we're kind of bridging from SEO to GEO. And I know I had a conversation with a web designer earlier this year about that. And I said, hey, I quit using Google basically in January. And I think at the time only 3% of Americans were really using ChatGPT as like their search engine or whatever. But I was convinced that 20% of people by the end of this year would really be like moving over to more AI-based searches. But when you look at that and think about ChatGPT or Perplexity, and they're deciding which dentist to recommend, what's going to matter most in this new world with regard to getting them on your side or searching well for them?
Yeah, I think reviews play a huge role in that. In fact, I
Mm-hmm.
do some test search down here where I live in Parkland, Florida, and I go, who is the best dentist in Parkland? And it just happens to be a BirdEye client. So
Uh-huh.
reviews are definitely playing a role in there. Your website content definitely plays a role in there. The areas that, Reddit, believe it or not, Reddit has a big influence on these AI engines. So
Interesting.
you've got to put yourself in positions where these AI engines are looking at what the content you're putting out, your patients are putting out, and that's part of the things you have to pay attention to. And that's why I said if you're ignoring AI, you're going to be left in the dust because that's the way people are going to be searching. And then I don't think anybody. You may have 10% doing it now, but in the
Yeah.
next 2 or 3 years, I think you're going to have close to 50%. I still
Oh,
remember
absolutely.
when I used to give seminars and I used to say, if you ask Siri who
Mm-hmm.
the best dentist is, it uses Yelp reviews. Okay. Now
Oh, I didn't know that.
I never spoke to Siri. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I typed emails out and typed text message. Now I voice text and voice email literally
Yeah.
all day long when I'm
Yeah.
doing
Right.
stuff so I don't have to type. So I think that there's going to be a shift in the way we do business. And this is one of them in that
Mm-hmm.
case.
Well, I totally agree. And, I've really gotten into, I mean, back in 2004, when I built my first website, I got really into SEO, and there were people who talked about content is king. So then, like, I included so many internal links and external links, and I was putting in so many keywords and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I dominated. I kind of dominated the Midwest on like 6 or 7 key terms. And even in Chicago, got a couple things on page one. So I'm a firm believer, but like the tide has turned, and GEO, AEO are so important. Also, I've really been leaning into that heavily, and I'm excited to see that process. And the people who are early adopters, who get out there in front of the curve, listening to people like you talk about GEO, I think that they're going to be in a really advantageous position.
Again, I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So, dentistry's always got trends, and sometimes they're overhyped, sometimes they're underestimated. What's like the most overhyped trend in dentistry right now? And is there anyone that's just totally underestimated at this point?
The overhyped trend in dentistry right now, that's a tricky one. There's so many various ways to take that question into consideration. I'm not really sure what's overhyped. I mean, I hear a lot about printed veneers. I know it's a clinical side of things.
Yeah.
Printed veneers are definitely not the long-term solution for people. And I was just at a
Hmm.
course I was at a meeting that David Holmbrook gave, and I was speaker there. And
Nice.
David was, I don't want to say admonishing those, but they were really a temporary solution. Like I said, I haven't had my hands clinically in someone's mouth for 3 years, so I'm certainly not an expert in that.
Right.
But in the marketing space, It's funny. I talk about how important AI is, but I also think that AI is overhyped still. Okay.
Yeah,
I really
sure.
do. It's
Yeah.
not the end all be all. It's
And it
not
makes
the,
mistakes.
it does.
In so many ways, it's really dumb. And if you don't have a human at the helm, like managing it and making sure that it's on track, you're not going to end up with what you think you're going to end up with.
Yeah, once again, I agree with everything you're saying there. So yes, it does make mistakes. Yeah, I use the AI stuff all day long, every day. I'm always on these AI agents helping me do what I do. I do check it for mistakes. But like I said,
Yeah,
AI is the next best thing, but I think it's also overhyped.
yeah,
I think Google ads are somewhat overhyped. I think reviews are still underhyped, believe it or not.
yeah.
But I mean, that's really where I think SEO, I think people underestimate SEO. I think you still need to do SEO.
You
And there's so
do.
many people who don't understand it. There's no way to track it, but that's something that you need to pay attention to as well. It's part of the omni-channel marketing approach that you want to have.
Yeah, for sure. And just talking about AI platforms, I mean, ChatGPT was, of course, the first one that people are really familiar with and most people use, whatever. But I've really enjoyed Claude, Perplexity, and Gemini as well. And I found that they all have different strengths and different weaknesses. I use them in different ways. Do you have a favorite between all of those, or do you have another one that you like?
I love ChatGPT. I mean, it's where
Mhm.
I spend most of my time. Once you prompt it right and you teach it right, it really is your
Yeah,
voice. And when I
yeah,
throw something in there, it knows what to do with it. And so I've really stuck with it. I've tried some of the other products that are out there.
yeah,
I'm still a ChatGPT fan, and
yeah.
I've been using it from the beginning. So that's really where my loyalty
Hmm.
is. And
Yeah,
look, when you went to dental school and you used a product that worked really well, you didn't change it when you got out of dental school.
yeah,
I still
absolutely.
I still use the same bonding agent when I was practicing. It's the same
Mhm.
thing when you start with something and you're successful with it, you keep
Yep.
using it. You're not going to switch necessarily.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, I use all four of them, Len, but ChatGPT is always the quarterback because it does the most things well. Whereas, Claude, I think, is really good for emotional resonance. Perplexity is really good at deep research and validating, sources and things like that. And Gemini is great for trends and a few other things. But yeah, it's a great tool, but you can't turn everything over to it. Like you said, you got to be there monitoring it as the moderator of the conversation.
100% agree with you as well.
So I just have a few more questions, Len, but one of them is around like photography. I know you really enjoy that, but you also enjoy speaking and hosting and being an entrepreneur, all those kinds of things. I mean, of all of those roles, like which one feels the most natural and or is there one that like surprises you the most?
So, photography is taking a back seat. I enjoyed photography. I enjoyed it more when I was in any gadget I liked when I was in practice. And,
Yeah.
I love technology. I don't do as much photography. I literally have an iPhone that I do most of my photography with just because it's easy.
And it's so good. I mean, the quality is so good these days.
Yeah, so that's a tough thing to answer there.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'll tell you
Did you
what.
get did
God,
you get a chance to get out and just like take pictures like you used to?
no, not like I used to. Things come and go. My wife and I were empty nesters. My son, who's back from college right now, he was obviously a big part of our lives, and we became empty nesters. So my wife and I adopted a puppy, or not adopted. We bought a Bernedoodle puppy, and
Oh, nice.
the Bernedoodle puppy has been taking a tremendous amount of our time, believe it or not. We had a puppy when my son was like 3 years old, and it was a Shih Tzu, and I don't remember things being as hectic as it was when we had a 3-year-old and a dog, and now we just have a dog, and things are very hectic. So a lot of the things that I enjoy, I don't have time to do right now because I'm busy taking care of the puppy with my wife. So.
Yeah. It's funny. We're empty nesters now for the first time, and all four of our kids are home now for Thanksgiving. And my daughter brought her puppy home. Right? She's looks like a puppy because she's a toy poodle, but she's like 2 years old. But tell you what, you're not lying. I mean, it's a lot of work. We have our two dogs, but having this one is like having 10 dogs. I swear to God, and she only weighs about 3 pounds.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So, hey, Len, if you were to give the 2005 version of Len Tau advice, fresh out of residency, about to buy a practice, what bit of advice would you give that new dentist that would have saved you years of stress, accelerated your success, or helped you, avoid problems or challenges?
Take as much C as possible.
Hmm.
Listen to those you trust.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things I do talk about is the 98% decision factor. And it's one of the things I learned in very early in my career. I was taking a class by Roger Levin, and he
Hmm.
talks about this 98% of decision factor, which means that 98% of the decisions you make in life can be made in literally 2 minutes. They will have zero
Yes.
effect on your long-term life. Whereas
Yes.
2% of the decisions you make are would be ones that have some ramifications that could have a long ramification, such as, do I buy a practice? Do I sell a practice? Do I move? Do I
Hmm.
hire an associate? These types of things. Most of those decisions you make in life can be done in literally seconds and will have zero residual effect on you long term with those decisions. And that's how I live my life. I'm very impulsive. I make
Yeah.
decisions on a whim. Just like when I moved to Florida, that was a big decision, and it took me more than 2 minutes to make, but we
Right.
made a decision and just went with it. So I think that's a very big thing that I learned very early in my career that I talk about during a lot of my seminars is that 98% decision factor, because a lot of people, they get stuck in their own analysis paralysis type of stuff and they get nothing gets done. So,
Right.
and if you want a different result, you have to consider different behaviors, because if you do the same thing over and over again, everything's going to be the same.
Yeah. The definition of insanity, right?
Yep.
Well, hey, Len, I want to close out with a little rapid fire. Again, just turning the tables. You surprised me with that 6 months ago. And so just give me the first thing that pops into your head for these. So,
Sure.
coffee order, simple or complicated?
Simple.
One review you'll never forget, either good or bad.
One review I'll never forget. Bad. Bad. I mean, this patient ripped me apart. Thank God it was on Facebook, so it wasn't very visible. But I show it. I mean, when I give my seminar, I'm real. I'm real, and I showed it, and it's like scammer, unaffordable, unethical. And I think she ended it with, the Hippocratic oath means nothing to this man. I mean, avoid him at all costs. It was a bad review, and that's one that sticks with me, all the time. So
Oh, God. Yeah. Okay. Uh, okay. One piece of tech you rely on daily, and it can't be BirdEye.
one piece of tech I rely on daily: ChatGPT.
Okay. Yeah. Yankees or Rangers, if you could only keep one.
Yankees.
Okay. If you weren't in dentistry or tech, what job would you pick? And would it could be ridiculous or realistic?
If I wasn't in tech or dentistry, what would it be in? Probably entrepreneur, some type of entrepreneurship. Probably, well, I actually have another business. I co-own a sports card business. So maybe it
What?
would be
Oh,
something.
you do? I didn't know
Yeah.
it was a business. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I,
cool.
I own a sports card store in South
Oh,
Florida.
man. I gotta go.
Co-own. So
I've got thousands in my parents' basement that I've been meaning to get out someday and actually look through. They're probably not in good enough condition, but I probably have some gems in there.
yeah, so I would say probably something related to that.
Okay. So your go-to comfort food after a long day.
Macaroni and cheese.
Oh man, I'm right there with you, buddy. Right there with you. Excellent. So as a photographer, what do you enjoy photographing most?
My son or my family, my dog now. I take pictures all day long of my dog. I mean,
All right. One thing you always overpack for your speaking trips. Or
um,
you probably carry on every time, don't you? You don't overpack. You
yeah, I don't
probably down to
overpack
a
ever.
science motion.
I literally, if I ever have to go on a long trip, I regret it because,
Yeah.
or I dread it, I should say, because I had to put something under the plane. I
Yeah,
never put
right.
something under the plane. So I don't really overpack anything. I take the bare minimum with me because I don't want to have to worry about. I flew to like Iceland for 5 days with just a carry-on. I mean,
Yeah. That's impressive, man. Like I need to take lessons because I always overpack
I
personally.
definitely don't overpack. So
So, okay. Most overrated social media platform for dentists today.
TikTok,
Okay.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I just joined 2 months ago, and honestly, I get more engagement on TikTok than any other platform. It's not like bringing in business necessarily, but it's
Yeah,
it's
I,
interesting to watch.
I never understand. I still don't understand TikTok. So.
I haven't done any dancing or singing on it either, so
I have one dance on there. If you look me up, just type in Dr. Len Tau. Seriously, those listening, type in Dr. Len Tau into TikTok. There's one video I did many, many years ago, and it's on there and people comment on it. So
I think you might have shared it from the stage at a Supercharge, actually.
yeah, it's me dancing with,
Yes,
yes, correct.
yes.
Yep, yep.
So, what matters more now, clinical skill or digital trust?
Well, I think clinical skill is really important. You can't, I mean, if you don't have good clinical skills, it affects really everything. But if you don't have the trust of, whether it's Google or the patient, it's not going to affect you either, or it's not going to help you either. I think it's a combination of both of those things.
Agreed. What's harder on a dentist, a no-show or a one-star review?
Probably a one-star review.
Yep,
because
I'd agree.
because a one-star review literally can have a lasting effect of problematic for doctors. A no-show sucks, and it may cause you to be stressed for that hour it's there, definitely one star review.
Well, and that's why people need to sign up with BirdEye, get more 5-star reviews, and it just floods it right out. So
exactly right.
A dental trend that's overhyped. I already asked you that, so I'm not going to ask you that again. The biggest lie dentists tell themselves about growth. Like, what do dentists always think? This is going to be the silver bullet. This is going to be the thing that takes me to the next level, but it's not going to.
Hiring a consultant isn't always going to help you grow the practice. You have to be willing and able to accept change or being malleable to do something different. And very few practices or doctors can do that.
Oh man, I agree 100% with that. One metric that instantly tells you if a practice is healthy.
Everybody's worried about their front door, how many patients they attract and get new patients, but very few people know how many people leave the practice and activate themselves. And you can be getting 50 new patients a month, but you've got 75 leaving the back door and your practice is going downhill, not uphill.
Yeah, boy, a lot of times dentists don't even look at that. So, well, that's great, Len. I tell you what, I really enjoyed the conversation. You're just a great guy and a plethora of great information and experience. So appreciate you being so kind of transparent and really dropping a lot of pearls that I think dentists can go out there and run with next week.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm happy to engage or talk to whoever wants. I can drop my contact information. I know I don't know what you were going to ask, but I appreciate having me on. So
yeah, no, absolutely. So how can people reach you if they want to learn more?
So I'm very easily gotten a hold of. I am on every social channel. So it's Dr. Len Tau. My email address is len@drlentau.com. My cell phone number, because it's all over the internet, is 215-292-2100. You can go to my Supercharge website, superchargeyourdentalpractice.com. You can go to my Raving Patients podcast. You can go to my Facebook group called Raving Patients. If you need to get a hold of me, you will find a way. It's very easy to do that.
You are definitely the most accessible guy in dentistry, and I love that. What about your next event? Tell us about the next thing you have coming up on the calendar.
I mean, I'll be selfish here. I have a lot of travel coming up in 2026, a lot of smaller events. So I'm really avoiding the big events. They're not just not the same thing anymore. But my event is Supercharge Your Dental Practice. It's 2026. It's at Pier 66 on September 25th through 27th. Okay. It's the 25th to 27th, 2026 at Pier 66. 15 amazing speakers. We extended it to a third day this year because the one thing that people were a little bit disappointed in is they had this great resort that they really couldn't experience. So it's a full day Friday. It's like a shorter day on Saturday and then a really shorter day on Sunday, but it's spread out over 3 days versus 2 very long days. And I think people will really enjoy the experience then.
Well, awesome. I can highly recommend it because I really enjoyed Bermuda. I really enjoyed Supercharge this fall. And I think that everybody I talked to did as well. So that's awesome. So last thing, was there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
No, I mean, look, if you have interest in BirdEye, you can reach out to BirdEye. You'll get me anyway, or you can reach out to me directly and say you have interest to learn more about BirdEye. It's the same thing either here or there. But honestly, I have to be honest with you, that was the most thorough interview I've ever gotten. I mean, that was a lot of questions. We went through a lot of different things. So that was really well done. You're for someone who hasn't had a podcast for a long time, or only had a podcast for a very short time. You did a very good job interviewing me. So that's well done on your end.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I did some research and I love researching guests because you learn so much and there's just a lot of depth and a lot of things. And I wanted to really honor that. So thanks so much again for taking the time. I really appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching our podcast today. And we'll drop all of Len's contact information in the show notes. And he is very accessible. Feel free to reach out. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks very much, Jim, for having me.
This has been the Foundation Dental Podcast. If this conversation was valuable, share it with a colleague who's building something meaningful. For more leadership resources, visit foundationdentalalliance.com.